a lot of people talk about the EU and how they ban so many ingredients. They're not ingredients that we would use in your products anyways. And so people think skincare is a lot more scary than it actually is. And we're not using any ingredients that will do long-term damage. And like all of the ingredients that we're using have research on them and they are tested for safety. We do HRPT testing. We do clinical sometimes. So I don't know if I can pinpoint one ingredient that's like, oh my gosh, stay away from that because we're probably not using it.
Today on the show, we have one of my favorite cosmetic chemists to follow at Jane the Chemist. Cosmetic chemists are really having a moment on social media, and I believe it very well deserved because they are the true masterminds behind all the formulas and the products that we're using. They know the ingredients back and forth. They know how to formulate with them, how to use them to make them cosmetically elegant products that we like to use, and also how to keep us safe. A lot of my followers DM me, message me questions and concerns about the products they're using when they find out XYZ chemical is in them. So I really wanted her to kind of ease our minds and help us understand the efficacy and the safety of the products that we're using. Also, what products we should be using, what we should be splurging on, what we can save on, and other little tidbits and things we should be looking for. And she definitely delivered. You guys are going to love this episode. What is your earliest skincare memory?
Oh my gosh. I remember my mom used to use a ton of skincare. I feel like this is everyone's story, but I used to go into my mom's bathroom and just play with all the makeup that she had in there and all the skincare. And my mom is a huge skincare lover and she still uses like all the different brands to this day. And I've obviously introduced her to many new brands, but yeah, my earliest skincare memory is just basically raiding her bathroom of everything and just trying it on. And I would even do the same with my dad, but not with skincare. Like my dad would always wear contacts growing up, and I didn't have contacts at the time, so I'd always like pretend to be putting in my own contacts.
That's so cute.
And so I feel like just between now I got LASIK. I did have to get contacts later in life, but between the two of them, I just like always wanted to mimic my parents and do the same thing.
My daughter's not even 2 yet, and she'll like get hold of one of my brushes and I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's so cute, but at the same time I'm like, oh my God, what am I like teaching her? Like I can't believe like not even 2 years old, she's already like mimicking these things, but hopefully
oh my gosh,
it's harmless.
Well, you're setting her up for success. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I hope so. So for the audience, you're the first cosmetic chemist that has been on the show, and you're one of just a few that I follow. And I feel like cosmetic chemists are really having a moment on social media, a very well-deserved moment because you guys are the true experts in formulation and ingredients. And so for the audience, can you explain a little bit about what a cosmetic chemist actually is?
Yeah, so there's a wide range of cosmetic chemists. I know a lot of chemists work on either strictly skincare, some do color, some do hair care specifically, some do a little bit a mix of all of them. And then there's cosmetic chemists that work on like fragrances and, there's pet care too. So there's like a really huge umbrella. But the ones that I interact with on social media, at least, and for me specifically, I usually do more skincare and hair care, a little bit of color cosmetics. I try to dabble as much as I can. It's just cleaning up with color cosmetics is really difficult in the lab. But yeah, we basically work with brands or individuals who want to create brands to develop a unique formula for them. Usually it can either be a whole custom formula or a reverse engineered formula based on something that they already like. But it's a very technical and creative job, I would say. And it's a really niche industry that I hope more people hear about and get into.
I'm really excited for people to hear this because I get a lot of inquiries from not only followers, but also like I have 21 nieces and nephews, a lot of my younger nieces who, are looking at the skincare world and are so enamored by it, especially with the rise on social media. And they're so smart. And I like that these two worlds can kind of mesh together. Like skincare and beauty is so creative, but obviously chemistry is, I wouldn't say it actually has its own creative aspects as well, actually. But I love that there's a place for all of you really, really smart people to then also kind of expand into this like creative world. And that's kind of how I present it to the younger generation who asks me questions. I'm like, you can still be the smartest one in the room and end up working with skincare one day. It's really like, there's so many exciting options.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that because that is exactly how I got into this industry. Because I grew up dancing my whole life, and I would always put on stage makeup and just play with all this, like, makeup and skincare, but I was also a chemistry major and I loved science, and I just thought to myself, like, there was no way I could merge the 2. Like, I loved having my creative outlet, I loved science, but, like, I just thought I'd either have to work in a lab 24/7 just, like, making chemicals, or I would just I wouldn't do dance full time. So,
Mhm.
I found this niche and it was, like, honestly the perfect blend of the 2, and I've been so happy to be in this space because it's, like you said, the perfect intersection between creative and STEM. So,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And can you tell us a little bit about your school and then subsequent career journey until now? How did you get here?
yeah, so I graduated from UC Irvine with a degree in chemistry. And at the time, I wasn't very aware of all the programs that are out there now for cosmetic chemistry. So every time someone asks me, how do I get into this field? I 100% recommend doing a school that has an undergrad in cosmetic science or a master's. But for me, I kind of took the route where I would say I climbed from like the bottom to the top essentially, and I got a job at a contract manufacturer through the Society of Cosmetic Chemists, which is a organization that I am part of, where a bunch of us chemists will congregate every month and talk about new things in the industry. It's really nerdy, really fun. But I started working at a contract manufacturer and I had a few mentors during my time to really teach me how to formulate and teach me the ins and outs of everything. And I took a lot of online courses and what is it called? Extended education programs through
Hmm.
SEC where I could learn more about the science and like the little nitty-gritties of everything. And honestly, from there, it's like really just trial and error in the lab to really learn how to formulate. I tell every student this: you can learn how to formulate as much as you want on a piece of paper, but until you get into the lab, it's so hard to know how things will really come together. So that is where I built my experience. And then after going to a contract manufacturer, I ended up working in big pharma for a couple of years, where I really kind of went from one end to the other end because big pharma is like super strict. And I
Hmm.
learned all the ins and outs of how drug development is basically all the protocols of drug development, but it applied to skincare. And then I also moved on to the brand side where I did more product development from a technical angle. And yeah, just kind of going around the beauty industry and kind of experiencing different angles of it. But it's been really interesting doing it all. So,
I love that. Are there any products we would know that you kind of helped formulate?
yeah, there are. I unfortunately can't disclose, I don't think, but
Oh, I didn't
there
know that.
are.
Okay. I actually was
Yeah.
kind of wondering that if that was like a rule. That I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I don't know the exact rule, but I don't feel like a lot of chemists disclose what they work on.
Mm.
But yes, you will see some products that I've worked on in stores.
So
Yeah.
exciting.
I'll tell
I
you
know. Yeah.
offline.
I know because I get the inserts from Prequel that your face is on there sometimes. So maybe you could talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that. Prequel is such a fun launch from our friend Dr.
Oh,
Sam Ellis and really,
yes.
really cool products. And I love that she's highlighting the chemists that she's working with in such a really cool way. It's so cool to see you guys on the little package inserts and the little cards that come with the mailers. It's really neat.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, Dr. Sam Ellis is literally an angel. I love her, and she is
Yeah.
so extremely smart at delivering really technical information in a very digestible way. I don't know how she
Hmm.
does it, but it's such a skill. But yeah, no, it's been great working with her and kind of just going over their launch pipeline and seeing what's in store, talking about trending ingredients, how these trending ingredients can be incorporated into their pipeline and stuff like that. So it's been really fun being on her advisory board.
So cool. So I do want to touch a little bit on ingredients because a lot of the questions that I get is around splurge versus save. And so from coming from the cosmetic chemistry standpoint, what ingredients do you think we should be prioritizing not only maybe from a budget standpoint but also from like a packaging standpoint? What should we be more picky about and what is pretty much, kind of works well on its own, more stabilized that we don't have to worry too much about ingredient wise?
That is a really good question because from my side or my angle, you see brands that charge a lot more than what their formula actually looks like, and you see brands that are, really cutting it thin with margins. So it's interesting seeing both ends. But I would say, like, there are ingredients that I would splurge on, maybe your retinoids or your vitamin C's, like your standard ingredients that you will use every day. But it's interesting that you bring this up because I also think, as much as I care about the specific ingredients that go into a formula, I think when I talk to people about splurging on skincare, at that point it doesn't even matter what the ingredients are to me, because I feel like skincare is such a self-care ritual that I would just tell someone to spend on what makes you feel good, because at the end of the day, it's an experience. And no matter how many ingredients I put in there, if it doesn't feel great on the skin, it's the experience that matters, right? And like,
Mhm.
not always the ingredients, but because you don't need expensive ingredients to get results. You can definitely get results with affordable skincare. So when I think of splurge, I think of like, spend it on what makes you happy, spend it on something that looks nice on your shelf. But if you want efficacy, it doesn't always have to be a splurge. I don't know if that answered your question,
That
but
absolutely did. And I really like that answer because I think sometimes in our line of work and this whole like social media, like skincare education, we almost sometimes like poo poo the splurge products and the splurge brands. But at the end of the day, exactly as you said, sometimes that cosmetic elegance or the way the package looks on your shelf is worth it to somebody to spend the extra money. And
exactly.
that's all on you. That's your choice and what feels good for you. So I actually love that answer.
Yeah, because I mean, when I grew up, my mom loved using the SK2 and the Chanel and the Dior Beauty, and like, not to say they don't have any efficacy, but I'm pretty sure you're spending a lot more on the brand and the experience than the actual product itself. But hey, it made my mom happy, and I would steal her stuff, so it made me happy. So I feel like that's what matters sometimes when you splurge at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
listen, I'm a sucker for a good brand. So I will be the first to say I have bought one too many Chanel products probably. Usually
Oh,
I think I
same.
end up splurging on the color cosmetic side. It just feels like a little bit more fun to me. But I definitely have splurged on a lot of luxury beauty that I probably didn't need to.
It's okay. I'm guilty of it too. And like, from my end, it feels like it shouldn't be justified if I can dissect the formula. But sometimes I just like the bottle. Like, there's
Yeah.
nothing better than a nice, heavy La Mer bottle. Although I
Oh,
don't think I would spend on La Mer all the time, but
yeah.
it looks
I feel
nice.
you. I feel you. So, speaking of formulation, what can you really tell? And I'm saying you, like an experienced mind, what can you really tell from an inky list? Like, can you tell a lot from an ingredient list, or do you feel like you need the actual like formulation in front of you to be able to understand? Or is it more like the inky list plus actually getting in there and feeling the product and then you can kind of figure it out?
I think what helps me the most is definitely looking at the Inky List and the physical product together to really understand where certain levels of products may be, because you can't tell the full story from the ingredient list. It can be like a really thin product, a thick product. You can kind of tell, but you can't really tell. So
Hmm.
it's nice to have both of them in hand to really reverse engineer. And usually the way I dissect ingredient lists is I will look at the first couple of ingredients, because I know that they are probably above the 1% line, as we all know, but looking at what humectants are being chosen and what emulsifiers are being chosen. And I can kind of spot like certain actives that are being used from different suppliers, and I could spot patterns with different brands and like what's popular in terms of ingredient trends. So it's interesting to see, like, from my side, I'm working with a lot of suppliers that give us the raw materials, and it's interesting to see like who's using those raw materials in
Uh
different
huh.
products.
That
Yeah.
is interesting. And because you mentioned it, I'm curious, and this might be like a maybe a hot question, but how often are you being asked to reverse engineer a product? Is it pretty often that people will try to emulate another product?
All the time. And I feel like even
Wow.
if people don't directly ask us to reverse engineer a product, it is not helpful to start with nothing in front of us. So I will
Hmm.
usually always ask them, what is your or your benchmark or your standard? Because for me to just go off their words, it's really difficult. I need something to touch and feel to understand like how you want your dry down to be, the slip of the formula, the cushion, the body, everything. So it even if they don't ask, I will usually ask for a benchmark. So, I guess to
So
your
it
question
is
all the time.
it's helpful then to have that. Okay,
Yes.
that makes sense. That makes a lot of
And
sense.
it's so interesting because I feel like to the public, everyone is like, oh my gosh, they copied this person, they copied that person. But as chemists on the back end, we're like, please tell us who you want to copy because
That's
it's really
so
hard for
funny.
us. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really hard.
I think as a consumer, hearing the word reverse engineer sounds like, oh, they stole it. But no, it's probably just a part of the way it all works on the back end.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like reverse engineered one to one. It's just maybe we're using the same emulsifiers or like the same humectants that they're using, but we're tweaking it a little bit to fit their marketing story or whatever that
Hmm.
may be.
Do you have clients who are like, well, I like the way this one feels, but I like the way this one dries down? Or like, do they kind of give you options from different and then you have to kind of figure out how to meld it together?
Yeah, exactly. It kind of comes in all forms, but we try to funnel all their requests into one and make a product.
Oh my gosh, I bet that is so difficult. And how often are you working with people who are like the people who are contacting you to make these products? Are they very experienced in this field, or is it someone who's kind of coming off the street trying, like who's getting in contact with you by the time you're involved? Is it someone they work with who then found you, or are you actually talking to people who are off the street wanting to like create something?
I feel like they come in all different forms. You get like people that are super experienced, like you said, and like they know exactly what they want and they know their margins, they know how to handle the business aspect of it. And then you get people on the other end that's not so much experience and you need to do a little bit of hand holding.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, the first client is what I want, but I can't say that I don't get the second type of client. And it's okay because I feel like this everyone's trying to get a piece of the beauty industry. And sometimes you just have to do a little bit more explaining. And it's better to explain upfront. And I tell all my clients this. I will be super open and honest with you and very transparent upfront because I don't like surprises later. And I feel like people who don't get that upfront honesty in the beauty industry will get bitten later because
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely a really competitive industry to stay in and it's tough and you don't realize a lot of things up front like minimum order quantities, like how much you need to actually manufacture or like where your products are shipping in from, your packaging or all that stuff. So I try to be as transparent as possible.
I like that. I think this is good for us to hear too, because, the audience is largely consumers. So when we're buying these products, I think this conversation kind of helps me understand like why some brands might be more expensive or why indie brands might operate the way they do, right? Like all of these
Mhm.
things that go into picking packaging, picking all of these things. There's so much more to the story.
So much more. Sometimes not pretty, but yeah.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a little bit about your view, or if you can educate us a little bit on the EWG, because this is kind of a question I get a lot from viewers. I think that there's a misconception that things like clean beauty and EWG and all of those things are just a well-regulated part of our industry and something that we all rely on, but in reality, that's not always the case. So I'd love to hear from a chemistry standpoint what your thoughts are on organizations like that. There are many others.
Yeah. I mean, well, first, I think the EWG really got popular because people started researching more about ingredients and they didn't have anywhere to turn to, and EWG was kind of the only resource. However, the thing I don't like about the EWG is that it's not nuanced and it looks at ingredients as 100%. And as we all know, when we make formulas, nothing's in there at 100% unless you're selling straight water and preservative. Even that's not even at 100%, but nothing is at that high of a level for it to be it doesn't EWG doesn't look at those nuances and like how much you're putting in. So it's really skewed because it says fragrance is bad or parabens are bad. And like there's so much more context and research that goes behind it that makes it a lot safer than how the EWG portrays it. So although I feel like they are somewhat okay starting points for consumers to really educate themselves. I don't think EWG is reliable. I know Paula's Choice also has a platform that educates more about ingredients, and I feel like that one is a little bit better. Obviously, it's a little bit biased because Paula's Choice is a brand as well, so
Mm-hmm.
they are more biased towards their ingredients that they use. But I would encourage people to just trust the brand and the chemists that work behind it and really rely on them to, handle the safety of the product rather than going down rabbit holes and figuring out what's safe in your products.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of safety, can you explain a little bit about why our products need preservatives and why preservatives aren't like this dirty word or something that we need to be avoiding?
Yeah, so preservatives are really important because it helps with mold, yeast, bacteria in your products, and especially for products that are sitting in your shower where it may be warm, that could be an environment for more bacterial growth or yeast growth, or products that you dip your hands in consistently, or even makeup products where you're applying to your face consistently. You're introducing a lot of contamination into the product every time you use it. So preservatives are so important to help keep your products clean throughout its shelf life. So I don't know where preservatives got so demonized, but they are quite important.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a recent video you did where you went into Lush Cosmetics, which is so funny. Like I had like had such nostalgia when I was watching the video of you walking, like showing the Lush store, because I'm like, oh my God, I remember that place going in all the time. But I didn't realize that they have like two different types of products where they're either using a preservative or they call it self-preserving. So how could a product be self-preserving? What are they using that's making it self-preserving?
Honestly, I have no clue. I tried to look into the ingredient list. I feel like they use ingredients that have preservation properties, but they're not broad spectrum preservatives that we use, like phenoxyethanol or ethyl hexaglycerin. And so they might not be protecting against everything, which is why I noticed too the shelf life on those products are a lot shorter than the ones that are preserved. So I think Lush is aware that there is higher risk, which is why they are saying you have to use this up within 30
Hmm.
days. But it is sketchy because you don't know how someone's going to use the product after they buy and take it home.
Yeah. And I don't know how long they've been doing this, but I'm really interested, number one, if there are other brands doing something similar. And number two, how long it will last and if they're going to get burned, if there's going to be any major issues that arise from something like that.
Yeah, I'm super curious. I'm checking
Yeah.
in every day, just
Yeah.
like you are.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. So I want to ask you about a few ingredients that our community is interested in and that I am curious about too. These are different ingredients, but also kind of like ways that the ingredients are used in formulations. And the first one would be, what do you think about encapsulation, such as with retinoids? Can you tell us a little bit like how it works, like layman's terms, and why we might look for that in a product, why we might want it?
Well, I'm a huge advocate for encapsulation. I feel like it is such a great way to deliver actives into the skin. It is very pricey from the back end, putting it into formulation, especially when a customer doesn't want their formula cost to be really high. But essentially, what it is it's encapsulating the active in a lipid shell. And that lipid shell, when it hits your skin, it breaks down over time the outside and it delivers the active closer into your epidermis. And so it really helps with making certain actives like retinoids a little bit gentler on the skin. And it helps deliver that like timed release effect that you might see on the marketing terms because it doesn't all go into the skin right away. It kind of takes time to work, like retinoids. You can kind of encapsulate anything now. I feel like there's a vendor out there that can encapsulate like HA. You can encapsulate peptides. You can encapsulate vitamin C. So there's so many ways to do encapsulation now, and I feel like it is. I feel like it's going to be the next trend or like the next wave for sure.
And does this also help with stability of the ingredient? Is this something like could it
Yeah.
then be formulated with maybe ingredients it wouldn't otherwise be formulated with, or is it more how you're mixing it with your own routine, or can we do more with our encapsulated products than we might be able to do without?
Yeah, it definitely helps with stability. I will definitely say that. In terms of formulating it with other actives, I think it does give you some play, some room to play with other actives, but I wouldn't go too crazy. Like I wouldn't put a benzoyl peroxide with the retinol together. But it definitely helps with stability and like the color shift over time because as we know, retinoids get really yellow over time, and it definitely helps with that shift in color as it ages. So,
This is good insight too. If you're someone who's using an encapsulated retinoid, it gives us some insight into why the formulation might be a little bit more expensive. You're kind of paying for that. That's part of it,
yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And what do you think about sulfates? Like, let's talk about hair care specifically. So, there's so many sulfate-free shampoos. Is it something we should avoid? What is their purpose in shampoos?
Yeah, I just made a video on this not the other day. It's been like a couple months. I feel like time is just so warped in my head. But sulfates I feel like are so demonized because they're found in like detergents or dish soap really, commonly. And so people started thinking, "Oh my gosh, I can't use something that's in dish soap on my face." But the Roche-Posay actually has a product that has sulfates in it and it's approved by the Eczema Association, and it's kind of interesting to see like how is this so gentle, but it's in dish soap. And that's where I talked about how sulfates can be formulated to be more gentle, mixing it with an amphoteric surfactant or a some other like glycerin, like a high level glycerin. There's ways to soften it and just make it less stripping on the skin. So it all matters in the context of the formulation and not just as its own. So yeah, I don't know why sulfates are so demonized, but there are
Mm-hmm.
ways to make it a lot more gentler.
So we can't look at an ingredient list and see which sulfate is there, and automatically that means we will or won't be able to tolerate the product.
Exactly, yeah, and I think with shampoos, sulfates can be a little bit more stripping, but it's not all the time. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
really depends on the formulation.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and what about silicones in hair and skin products? What are your thoughts on silicones?
I love silicones. I feel like all of my favorite products out there, like Tatcha, the Indigo Night Repair, they all have silicones in it, and it's just a really great occlusive barrier for your skin, and it helps trap all that moisture in, and so that's why I really like it. And for your hair too, it gives that like really shiny glass hair effect. It helps seal all your cuticles in, so it's really great for hair care as well. I think people are scared because it might give you acne, and while that could be true, I feel like it's not always the case. Like I said, there's different types of formulations with silicones in it, and there's different grades of silicones too. There's really like thin, volatile silicones that will just evaporate from the skin and don't even have a chance to do any occluding on your skin. And there's also more heavy, denser silicones that can provide that occlusive effect. So, but they all say like the same ingredient on the back. So you can
Mm-hmm.
never really tell what grade of silicone they're using. But yeah, I love silicones in skincare and hair care.
So you're saying even you, when you read the list, can't tell what grade it is
Yeah,
because
I
that's
can't
something
tell.
that's so that's interesting. So all these, quote unquote ingredient experts who don't have a background in chemistry who are trying to decode these inky lists probably can't tell either then, huh?
Yeah, like if it says dimethicone, I can take a guess based on the physical product and, kind of guess what centipoid they're using, but I can't really tell the full story because like it could be a heavier weight silicone. Yeah, I don't know how people are just so confident which one they're using, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you definitely can't tell.
That's good to know. And what are your thoughts on hyaluronic acid and all the different weights and how often we're using it? Any thoughts there?
I feel like hyaluronic acid has gone on like a big roller coaster. Like everyone loves it, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, it's so overrated," and everyone's like,
Mm-hmm.
"Well, it's in everything," and then I don't mind it. I personally like hyaluronic acid. I feel like it's one of those ingredients that are in all your products now, and there's no harm to it. So why demonize it? And the different levels I feel like are useful because it helps with different levels of hydration in the skin. But yeah, I don't really have like super strong feelings towards it, but I know it's just been like on a roller coaster whether people are riding this hyaluronic acid
Mm-hmm.
train or whether they're getting off of it. But I like it. It works really well for plumping the skin. And yeah.
Okay. And I want to touch a little bit on ingredient toxicity in quotes. And things like, whenever I talk about slugging, I get a lot of comments about petrolatum, fragrance, PFAS, forever chemicals, parabens, all those things. Are there any things that you actually think we should avoid in cosmetic products?
I mean, aside from the ones I feel like will break you out, but that's like very personal to each,
Mm-hmm.
individual. Like I said, I feel like where a lot of the things that are a lot of people talk about the EU and how they ban so many ingredients. They're not ingredients that we would use in your products anyways. And so people think skincare is a lot more scary than it actually is. And we're not using any ingredients that will do long-term damage. And like all of the ingredients that we're using have research on them and they are tested for safety. We do HRPT testing, we do clinical sometimes. So I don't know if I can pinpoint one ingredient that's like, oh my gosh, stay away from that because we're probably not using it anyways in
Mm-hmm.
your formulations.
So you're not
Um,
avoiding parabens, any of those things. Those are all safe at the levels they're used at in our cosmetic
Absolutely.
products.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I think people think we're just like I, I don't know, like I think about the Powerpuff Girls like intro where we're just like dumping a bunch of chemicals into your formulations. That is like not how it works in the lab. We're literally eyeing out every single gram that we're putting into your formulation and like you'd be surprised like sometimes brands don't put too much stuff in there because it gets expensive. So yeah, this isn't like that Powerpuff Girl intro. We're not
Yeah,
dumping a bunch of chemical
that's so
X
funny. So we
into
shouldn't be worried about all these scary chemicals potentially being mixed into our products. We're safe.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
And what do you touched on this a little bit, but what do you feel about comedogenicity scales and lists and ratings on ingredients?
Yeah, oh my gosh, this one, it's such a buzzword, right? Everyone wants to get something that's non-comedogenic, but I think I'm sure you know, and like a lot of people are aware that this testing was done on rabbit ears. It's very outdated, so it's so hard to tell what's going to be comedogenic on all skin types. It's so dependent on the person again. And yeah, it's really hard to like fight that battle whenever people comment that in my videos because I'm like, I can't tell you if it's going to be comedogenic on your skin type, but it works for me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an outdated test. I feel like people should really patch test if you're really scared because you'd be surprised. Probably a lot of products work for you that you didn't think might work for you. So
Yeah, it's so, so personal. I always say the only way to know if a product's going to break you out is to use it yourself. There's no,
exactly,
magic wand that you can wave over the ingredient list to understand whether or not it's going to break you out or not.
exactly.
So, there are a couple of viral products, and I know you've talked about this one, so I want to get your thoughts on that viral Peter Thomas Roth. It was like a serum that made wrinkles disappear so quickly. I think it was an eye serum. I can't, but then they made a face one, I think too. And I don't know
Yeah.
if the audience remembers this, but there was I'm thinking of like a very distinct photo of a woman, and she had really intense under eye bags, and she
Mhm.
applied this, and they went away like almost instantaneously. And my mom even sent me this thing. She's like, "Do you think this works?" I mean, it was so viral. Can you talk a little bit about the effect that we're seeing and like what did they use? How is this possible? And was there any longevity to it?
Yeah, so these types of products are not for the long term. They're very like instant result products that don't work over a long period of time. So for that product specifically, I believe they're using a combination of different silicates or silicones that form this network over those wrinkles and kind of tighten. So it kind of forms this film over those bags and just smooths it over very temporarily. It does not work under concealer. So if you go in with a concealer, it's going to ruin that network of silicones that's on top. And it's kind of one of those products you just have to use on its own and you can't use with makeup. I did see that they used or that they came out with a primer. I feel like the primer is not as intense as that under eye one because it needs to work under makeup. So I think they reduced the level of silicones or silicates that are in there and probably did more like blurring, like PSQ,
Mm-hmm.
polymethylsilsesquioxate. It's a long word, but they probably put more blurring ingredients in there for the primer. But I haven't looked at that ingredient list specifically. But yeah, the Peter Thomas Roth eye gel is a very temporary effect product and will not give you long-term benefit.
That's funny that you say that because I remember my mom saying, I think I had gotten one in PR and I sent it to her. And she's like, it works, but like as soon as I put my makeup on, it's gone. So that makes sense
Yeah,
why you say
yeah,
that.
exactly.
Okay, so from your standpoint, if you could pick like one holy grail skin product, like brand, product, everything, one that you could use for the rest of your life, which one would
Mm.
it be?
I feel like the people that know me are gonna already know my answer. It's gonna be the Tatcha Indigo Overnight Repair Mask.
Okay, and why?
I do not know what I need to like meet this chemist that made this product because I just want to like shake their hand and be like, you did an amazing job with this product. It is like the only moisturizer. It's a reverse emulsion, which means the oil phase is on the outside and the water phase is on the inside. That gives you just baby plump skin the next morning, like consistently. Every time I use it, it makes my skin feel like a baby's bottom whenever I wake up. I don't know if you've tried it. Have you
I
tried
haven't,
it?
but I'm gonna go buy it after
Oh my
this
gosh.
glowing review.
I have put so many people on it and it is just so expensive. The only thing that breaks my heart is that it's $92, but I will happily buy it over and over again because I just understand the hype and I'm like, all right, take my money. But yeah, it just creates such a nice occlusive barrier on your skin and it traps in all that moisture. It makes your skin so soft the next day. And I know Dr. Sam Ellis also likes it too. So when I saw her review, I was like, I feel very validated.
Okay, I have to try it if you guys think
You
it's
have
amazing.
to. You have
And
to.
what about hair care? Is there a holy grail hair care product?
Oh my gosh, if I had to pick one, I'm gonna say the Color Wow
Oh, the Dream Coat?
Dream Coat.
So good.
It's
How does
so
that work?
good.
I love it. I use it every time I blow dry my hair.
Yeah, I feel like there's a learning curve to it because a lot of people message me and they're like, it doesn't work. I sprayed it and my hair still feels the same. But you have to use heat to activate it because basically what it is, it's a combination of two different actives or silicones that form this like wrap around your hair strands and it basically coats it in this like nice silicone shell, if you will. And it only forms that really nice layer when you use it and flat iron it or like blow dry your hair with high heat. But if you do it the right way, your hair will be so nice and soft for days.
Mm-hmm.
And even like after a few hair washes, my hair will still be really soft.
So do you take breaks? Do you use that after every wash or do you only use it like every few?
I use it every few washes, and before I do it again, I will always go in with a clarifying shampoo. I like the K18 detox
My
shampoo.
favorite clarifying shampoo ever.
I feel so validated right now. Yes.
It's
I
so
love that.
good. I love all
It's
their
so good.
products. They can do no wrong for me. I love them.
Absolutely. But yeah.
And what is your most underrated skin tip?
Ooh, underrated skin tip. I don't know.
It's a hard one, right?
I'm like, I feel like it's
What's
all out
something
there.
random that you do for your skin that you think like makes a big difference?
I mean, this is not underrated, but I definitely am on the slugging game all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I love Aquaphor. I love Vaseline, and I will usually put it around my lips and like around, not under my eye because I don't want to get milia, but like just up here where it gets a little bit drier, like around my nose.
Love
But
slugging. I put it everywhere. I love it.
oh my gosh, I love slugging. But I feel like people think you have to, like, if they have oily skin, they have to put it everywhere. Slugging can also be like spot treatment.
Absolutely.
So maybe that's my little tip is it doesn't have to be everywhere, but it can be if you want.
You'll appreciate this. I actually now slug almost exclusively with the prequel ointment. I call it like slugging 2.0 because of like all the other amazing ingredients in there. But I love it. That's like what I use to slug now. So good.
I love that one too. Yeah, I love that one on my lips as well.
Yeah, so good. Okay, rapid fire. Knowing what you know, would you use the following products? Vaseline, we already know, yes. You already said Vaseline was a yes. What about waterproof mascara?
Oh, yes. I would
I
definitely use
saw a
waterproof
video that you
mascara.
posted about, it was like a lawyer, and she was saying she wouldn't use it because she's seen so many class action lawsuits against waterproof mascara. What is the culprit? Like, what are the, I don't even understand what they're saying or what ingredient are they unhappy with?
So some of the film formers in there in some waterproof mascaras, I think they were saying had PFAS in it, but there are other ways that we can make mascaras waterproof, but there's nothing to be scared of. I feel like that lawyer just kind of like shot a huge bomb into the makeup industry and was like scaring everyone off. But no, there's nothing to be scared of. But yes, to waterproof mascaras, my little stubby lashes will not stay up unless I have a waterproof mascara on.
I rarely use one only because I'm super lazy and I hate like really removing it at night. I'm like,
Yeah.
I always use the same mascara for years, but it is helpful when you need waterproof. What about lash
Yes.
serums, lash growth serums?
Oh, this is a hard one. I guess this one kind of contradicts what I said earlier about if there's any ingredient that I wouldn't use. But I personally would be very careful with lash serums just because prostaglandin analogs are not as regulated, I think, as they should be. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of them should be prescribed or, drugs like Latisse, but there are a lot of analogs that are in like Grande Lash, or I just recently used an Obagi one,
Mm-hmm.
and
I
it
think
can give
all like
the
the main ones, like what's the
yes.
big one? Roden and Fields, Grande,
Mm-hmm.
all the ones that are like basically the ones that work, right? Are the ones that have the prostaglandin analogs in them.
Yeah, exactly. But I would just be careful because some people don't react very well to them. And I unfortunately am one of them. My lash or my eyelid gets really red and swollen and puffy. It's not with all of them though. I think I'm okay with Grande Lash, but the Obagi one that I used recently gave me like super puffy lids. So that one I would just be careful with. It's not, it's still person dependent, but
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
For some people, they'll be able to use them for years with no side effects. But I think it's one of those
Mm.
things where the side effects aren't well described. And so it's something that you use like you do all your other cosmetics thinking it's perfectly safe. And then there can be some long last, like, I mean, the darkening of your iris or like fat loss, those things that do
Right.
happen. I think it's something that, as you said, needs to be regulated a bit more. I agree with you.
Definitely.
Next one is chemical sunscreens.
Oh,
Do you still use
100%.
them? Yes. Some of my
I
favorite sunscreens.
love chemical sunscreens.
Yeah, me too. What about Olaplex?
Oh my gosh, I love Olaplex. I love their number 6, their leave-in conditioner. I use
Hmm.
that when I am not using my K18 mask. It just helps me style my hair so much better.
We had the lead of R&D at K18 on the podcast, and I was asking her because Olaplex is going through that whole thing about
Yeah.
what are they the protein what are they calling it, protein overload or whatever. And
Mhm.
she was saying like they're still trying to prove it, but what they believe is that it's really just like product buildup that's causing hair loss,
I think
from
so.
these like rich products that everyone's bond builders, all these things that people are using over and over without ever clarifying.
Yeah, no, I think that's a huge component, and I also feel like misuse of product. I think people tend to associate products like those to be like more is better, but and they just keep layering it on thinking that like the more you put on the better it is, but that's not always the case. So it can definitely, be misuse of product. I think it was Olaplex number 2 that they were overusing. I don't remember what it was, but it was one that was not meant to be used as frequently as some of the people from the lawsuit were using it.
Those instructions are there for a reason, right?
Exactly.
And what do you think about, are you using talc and powders and things like that? Are you afraid of that, or are we perfectly safe?
I have not been avoiding any of those, although I think my Laura Mercier powder is the talc-free version. I didn't get that because of that claim. I just bought it because it was there. But I think they're like I understand the scare behind it, but generally I think it's rather safe. And like I just wouldn't be like inhaling if your powder goes everywhere. Just
Yeah.
like don't be cautious of
Hmm.
that. I wouldn't go
Yeah.
in and like inhale it.
Right. Like anything you would do, you wouldn't, do that if you were painting your house or if you were doing,
Right.
sanding something that creates dust. Like that's just good practice in general, just
Absolutely.
to be cautious with those things. And what about
Yes.
self tanner?
Okay, I love self tanner because I sometimes I don't get to go out in the sun, especially if I'm in the lab. I like do not see daylight. I feel like a vampire, but I will say just don't go in the pool after self tanner because one time I did that and someone asked me if I had self tanner on. It was very embarrassing. So, but
Really?
yes, yeah, but my answer is yes to self tanner.
Okay, good. Well, that you covered all the ones that I get scared messages about from people who are ready to throw out all their
Really?
products. So I'm glad that you made us feel a little bit more at ease, that our products are safe, and that we can use all the products we love, hair, skin, all the things.
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, thank
One
you
last
for asking me
question.
this question.
Yes.
Yeah.
One last question. If you could tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. So many things come to mind. I would say, I feel like everyone says this, but wear sunscreen.
Mm-hmm.
I did not I did not wear sunscreen as religiously as I do now when I was out like swimming all the time, and I feel like I was not good about reapplying. My mom makes fun of me now for it because she's like, "I told you so." But obviously it's too late. But if I could go back, I would tell my younger self to keep reapplying sunscreen because I feel like my skin would be so much better than it is
Mm-hmm.
now. But it's fine.
Yeah. Prevention is key, right? Oh man.
Yes.
If I could have just prevented all the issues I'm now treating, that would be amazing.
Well,
But
your
since you
daughter's in
mentioned,
good
yeah,
hands.
I know, right? I'm like, anytime she's outside, I'm like such a stickler about it. And my husband is like a lot more
Yes.
lax. And I'm like, and she's got blonde hair, blue eyes. She's super fair. I'm like, oh my God. And we're in
Oh.
Miami. I'm like, we have to be so careful. I am gonna actually just cringe the day that she actually gets a sunburn. I know it will happen, but I am dreading that day.
I feel you. I feel you.
Oh. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been so nice
Thank
chatting with
you.
you. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're so busy, and helping us feel a little bit more at ease with all of our products.
Thank you so much for having me. This was honestly so much fun chatting with you.
If you don't already follow Jane, you definitely should. Her handle is at Jane the Chemist on Instagram, and sometimes I scroll her feed for hours just laughing at the way she delivers the information, but also learning so much about some of the formulations that I love and already use. She does reviews of different brands. She takes us through different stores, drugstore products. She really is such an amazing follow. So definitely give her a follow if you don't already. And let me know in a review or in a DM what you liked most about this episode. If there's a guest you want to see, please let me know. I'd love to have them on. And I'll talk to you next week, skin enthusiasts.